We've all seen fitness influencers push the limit for views, but what happens when a routine goes horribly wrong?
From a coach who tried a blind backflip off a ledge with a heavy dumbbell, to a bodybuilder with numb arms doing a heavy overhead press, ending the session in the most traumatic way possible. It was July 18th, 2019, in Uptown Dallas, Texas. Just after sunset, the front plaza of a high-end fitness club was buzzing. People were walking out of evening classes, valets were rushing around, and a couple of women were filming stretching clips right by the door. But right there, in that same light, stood a 27-year-old former tumbling and cheer coach who was about to make a choice that changed everything. And after a breakthrough online, she was ready to push her body to the absolute limit. Her name was Skye Madison Villar. Around Dallas, people knew her as a plus-size fitness influencer who had spent months proving that a bigger body could still achieve incredible athletic feats. I honestly loved her message, but the internet is a hungry beast that always demands more. Just days earlier, one of her tumbling videos had completely blown up, pulling in more views than anything she'd ever posted before. Hooked on the sudden rush of attention, Skye decided her next routine needed to be even more challenging and extreme to keep the momentum going. Let's be real. The pressure to stay relevant online can make people do some truly wild things. That evening, she met up with her boyfriend, Mason Cole, to film a stunt she called a blind gainer challenge. The plan was to execute a gainer-style flip off a raised concrete planter ledge with a massive twist. She wanted to hold a 15-pound dumbbell to her chest, jump, and throw it midair for a weightless visual effect. I could easily tell this setup was an absolute recipe for disaster from the very start, especially when trying to rotate extra body weight off a slick ledge. The planter sat right over a hard concrete curb, and the landing zone was incredibly tight. Mason immediately begged her not to do it, pointing out how dangerous it was. A bystander even walked up and warned her the landing area looked way too small, but Skye completely ignored them. She was hyper-focused on beating her last view count. She tried 3 practice flips without the weight, but they were incredibly messy, and her heels almost clipped the sharp curb.
You'd think that a bad warm-up would be a sign to pack it up and go home, but Skye just couldn't let it go.
Instead, she climbed back up, pressed the heavy dumbbell tightly against her chest, and told Mason to hit record. The takeoff was bad instantly. Because of the extra weight, she couldn't get the height she needed. Instead of driving up and fully through the rotation, she came off the ledge low and short, holding the dumbbell a split second too long and killing the lift she needed to clear the curb and reach the landing cleanly. Halfway through the flip, she realized she wasn't going to make it. Her arms opened early, and her body twisted in a desperate, last-second attempt to find the ground. She never got all the way around. Skye under-rotated and dropped into the narrow landing area beside the planter, coming down awkwardly on her upper back and shoulder near the curb. The momentum snapped her head sideways, and the back right side of her skull slammed into the concrete edge. It's a sound that makes your stomach instantly turn, a sickening crack, followed by the metallic thud of the dumbbell rolling away into the street. Mason dropped the phone and ran to her. A nurse who happened to be leaving the gym rushed over, screaming at everyone not to move her, but Skye's body had already gone totally slack. Emergency crews arrived in just 6 minutes, but the impact had fractured her upper neck and shut down her respiratory system. She was gone. After the case, the gym immediately locked down, banning tripods and influencer filming to dodge a massive lawsuit, which completely ruined the vibe for the local fitness crowd. Her family locked her social media accounts, but clips of the accident still leaked onto sketchy forums anyway. I still can't get over Skye risking her life for one flashy clip outside a gym, and somehow the next story is even worse because he never had to leave the building for things to go horribly wrong. It was November 14th, 2016, in Jacksonville, Florida. A local warehouse gym that was empty late at night, with buzzing overhead lights and clanking iron. We have all seen places like this. They are great if you just want to grind. Jan Clark Richard was age 29 and worked the night shift at a shipping warehouse. To stay big, he trained when everyone else was fast asleep. He ran an online fitness page with 3,000 followers.
He wasn't some polished influencer either. We're talking raw, sweaty garage workouts and aggressive kitchen rants about discipline.
Personally, I like that kind of hustle, but Clark was feeling massive pressure. A supplement shop dropped him because his views dipped. To get attention back, he started filming heavier, riskier lifting sets. That Monday, he went to the gym straight from work, still wearing boots. He set up a tripod right by the leg press, angling it to show off every single plate. He started a live stream with an aggressive title, promising a massive top set. But here is the massive red flag. Clark usually had a spotter for heavy leg presses, not to lift the weight, but just to pull the safety if things went wrong. But tonight, he was totally alone. Only 2 other members were there, and both had their headphones on. He loaded plate after plate for the camera. During warm-ups, he dropped lower than usual because deep reps look dramatic on video. By the time he unlocked the safeties for his main set, it was just a performance. The first rep was rough. The second went even lower, his knees touching his chest. On the third rep, that's where the disaster struck. The platform dropped too deep that his hips rolled, his back flattened, and his thighs jammed into his stomach. He tried to push, but had zero leverage. The sled didn't slam down and crush him outright. Instead, it pinned him at the bottom in a folded position, with his knees forced up into his chest and his torso compressed underneath the weight. He tried to catch the safety hooks, but he was pinned too low to reach them.
That was the real danger, because he was trapped in a position where his lungs couldn't fully expand.
His thighs were pressed so tightly into his abdomen and chest that every breath became shallow, strained, and weaker by the second. He started shouting for help. At first, he sounded annoyed, expecting someone to walk in. Then, pure panic set in. Another member in the locker room actually heard banging but assumed someone was just dropping weights. Soon, the pressure on his body and the panic made him vomit. Because he was still stuck flat under the sled, he couldn't sit up or even turn enough to clear his airway. He aspirated the vomit while still struggling to breathe. The live stream captured his legs trembling and choking sounds filling the room. It is honestly terrifying to think about. A man came out, saw Clark pinned, and started pulling plates off the machine while someone else called emergency services. Fire rescue arrived a few minutes later, but Clark was already unresponsive. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. The medical examiner confirmed he died from positional asphyxia. The machine did not fail. It worked exactly how it was designed. It just trapped him. After this tragedy, the gym banned solo filming after hours and put emergency buttons in the back rooms.
Look, I know social media clout is tempting, and those algorithms force us to push harder every single day. But absolutely no view count is ever worth risking your life over.
What gets me about Clark is how long he was trapped there. And the next case has that same dread because the influencer was already pushing her body toward collapse before she even hit record. It was January 22nd, 2020, in Tampa, Florida. The rental condo smelled like stale sweat and cheap tan. It was Expo Week, the absolute craziest time for fitness influencers, and the place was a disaster. Empty water jugs everywhere, old meal prep containers, and ring lights still glowing. Now, to understand how things got this bad, we have to look at the girl trying to survive this world. Her name was Mara Elise Quinhart. Mara was 25 years old and doing okay in bikini fitness, with about 4,000 followers. If you know the influencer world, you know that's enough to get free stuff, but not enough to pay rent. She used to work the front desk at a med spa, so she knew exactly how to make a polished life look easy online. But behind the scenes, she was desperate to escape hourly jobs and pay her bills. Plus, she was secretly sending money home so her brother could stay in college and help her sick dad. When a supplement company offered her a big money deal to promote their women's cutting stack, she signed the contract immediately, which required her to post daily updates using the products. The stack arrived in attractive packaging and contained morning appetite suppressants, powdered pre-cardio drinks, and specialized dry-out drops. Mara followed the instructions perfectly and filmed everything, but pretty quickly things went seriously south. She stopped sleeping entirely and woke up drenched in sweat. She even joked during a late-night Instagram story that her heart was literally buzzing. We see this all the time online, right? Laughing off real danger just to keep up appearances for the grid. Soon, her roommates noticed she couldn't sit still. Her hands shook while doing her makeup, and she had awful diarrhea. You could literally see her pulse pounding in her neck. When she messaged the sponsor about her racing heart, they told her it just meant the product was working. Talk about toxic gaslighting.
Now, you might be wondering why she didn't just stop. It's because her contract had a strict clawback clause. If she quit using the product publicly, she lost the money, and Mara desperately needed that money.
Instead of backing off, she doubled down. She ate less, did more cardio, and started taking over-the-counter water pills on top of the sponsor's stack. A roommate begged her to go to urgent care. Mara refused, saying she just had to survive peak week. On January 22nd, before sunrise, Mara set up her camera in front of a stair-stepper. She mixed her drink, adding an extra scoop because she thought she looked soft. She was already dangerously dehydrated. 15 minutes into the workout video, she stopped talking. She grabbed her chest, sat on the floor, and tried to laugh it off, but her hands shook so badly she spilled her water. Then, her knees buckled. Her roommate Tessa found her on the floor, gray and sweating. Mara said her fingers were numb, then she started vomiting and went into a violent seizure. Paramedics arrived in 8 minutes, but her heart had already stopped. She never woke up. The autopsy was terrifying. It revealed extreme dehydration, ruined electrolytes, and a massive amount of stimulants. Worst of all, the supplements were contaminated with unlisted thyroid drugs. Her heart simply couldn't take the pressure. In the end, Mara's family successfully sued the company, completely exposing the dark, ugly side of fitness sponsorships. Her brother eventually finished school through a wonderful memorial scholarship, but it's a brutal reminder of the terrifying and hidden costs behind that perfect online world. We always see the glitz, but we rarely ever see the true danger right there. Mara's story really bothers me because it shows how easy it is to normalize serious warning signs when there's money on the line, and the next death is just as frustrating because the danger was sitting right in front of Nina the whole time. It was August 9th, 2014, in Charlotte, North Carolina. The air in this townhouse garage was absolutely suffocating. Just heavy, trapped summer heat. Picture it, a lawnmower, plastic bins, and a stroller crammed against one wall. On the other side, some dumbbells, rubber mats, and a camera tripod.
Now, in this exact cramped little setup, a 30-year-old mother had managed to build a thriving second career.
But before she became a familiar face online, she was actually just a physical therapy aide at a local clinic, doing the usual grind of wiping down tables and helping people stretch. When her second kid came along, childcare costs totally wiped out her paycheck, so she quit and started filming home workouts. And that brings us to Nina Elise Porter. She wasn't some flashy influencer. Her audience was full of busy moms, cashiers, and office workers just trying to break a sweat in their spare rooms. Nina kept it totally real. Cheap lights, old gear, and zero intimidation. But by the summer of 2014, the online fitness world was getting crowded. To keep her numbers up, Nina started pushing much harder. High-intensity routines. That Saturday, she was rushing to film a quick back and shoulder video before her kids got back from her sister's place. The main move was a face pull using a thick black resistance tube. She had it clipped to a nylon anchor shoved into the garage side door. It's a super common exercise, but the gear was a disaster waiting to happen. The tube had tiny heat cracks near the handle, and the metal clip was visibly rusted around the hinge. Her husband Aaron had literally begged her to throw it out, but money was tight. She had a looming tax bill and school supplies to buy, so replacing a $20 band just didn't feel urgent. She even did a few test pulls, and everything held. So, she sets up the tripod, hits record, and starts her intro. To stay perfectly in frame, she plants her feet a bit farther back than usual and drops into a squat, pulling the band directly toward her face. She nails a few reps, resets, and then leans back hard to really max out the tension. And then, everything goes horribly wrong. The band didn't snap. Instead, that rusted metal clip sheared loose under full tension and rocketed backward, striking Nina directly in the left eye socket with enough force to rupture the eye and split her cheek wide open. In the same instant, the released tube lashed across the front of her neck as she recoiled. Covered in blood and barely able to see, Nina took a couple of frantic steps backward. Her heel caught the edge of the rubber mat, and she lost her footing. She fell straight backward, her skull slamming hard against the sharp steel corner of her weight bench before she hit the concrete. Aaron ran downstairs to a nightmare. He called emergency services instantly, but Nina was already losing consciousness. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but the damage was done. While the clip destroyed her eye, the real killer was the fall. The impact with the bench caused a massive brain bleed. Tragically, Nina passed away that night. Nina's case was a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly a normal day can turn.
So, if you have old resistance bands lying around, please check them today. One cheap replacement can literally save a life.
After hearing what happened to Nina, you want to believe some tragedies are just freak accidents. Christian's story is the kind that makes me wince, because he kept getting chance after chance to stop and just didn't take one. It was March 6th, 2018, in Tempe, Arizona. Picture a typical 24-hour gym just after 10 at night. You've got college kids burning off late-night energy on treadmills, TVs blasting silently, and people setting up tripods by the mirrors. It's a totally normal, mundane scene. Before we get into his name, you need to understand who he was online. He was a fitness influencer with a loyal following who loved to treat his body like a high-tech science project. Behind that screen name was Christian Elias Thorne, a 31-year-old who looked like he had life totally figured out. He didn't just post workout clips. He shared complex blood work charts and spreadsheets, explaining performance drugs and cutting cycles with the calm confidence of a doctor. He made bodybuilding look like a math problem. But here's the scary part. Off camera, that confidence had turned into a dangerous obsession. Christian was prepping for a big photo shoot, desperate to break out of his niche and finally go viral. He wanted that ultra-shredded, paper-thin skin look under the lights. His private notes later revealed his body was already screaming for help. Chest flutters, soaring blood pressure, and a racing pulse. Instead of stopping, he just tracked the data like a proud scientist. That week, he decided to do a live stream. The plan was to take a massive chemical cocktail on camera, hop on a treadmill, and prove that you can push advanced enhancement to the absolute limit if you're smart about it. Talk about famous last words. What his viewers couldn't see was how close he was to the edge. Completely sleep deprived, dangerously dehydrated, and absolutely redlined on black market gear, fat burners, and insane amounts of caffeine. The guy was a literal ticking time bomb, and nobody watching had any clue. He set up his phone, went into the locker room, swallowed a handful of pills, and injected a fast-acting steroid into his thigh. When he walked out, he was already dripping sweat. A gym employee actually asked if he was okay because he was leaning heavily on the side rails, but Christian just smiled, waved them off, and cranked up the treadmill speed. At first, the stream looked completely normal. Christian was talking to chat, hyping himself up, trying to push through the kind of pain he clearly wanted his audience to see. But within minutes, it turned into something horrifying. His heart rate monitor suddenly started climbing fast, 170, 180, then over 190 beats per minute. You can picture how wrong that must have looked in real time. He started sucking in air between words, clutching at his chest, and his lips reportedly began turning this awful gray color that told everyone watching his body was in serious trouble.
And this is the part I cannot get over. He still would not shut the stream off.
He stepped off the treadmill for a second like he finally understood something was very wrong, but then, unbelievably, he climbed right back on. Maybe he didn't want to look weak. Maybe he thought he could push through it for just a few more seconds. Whatever was going through his head, it cost him. He barely made it 3 strides before his legs gave out. His foot missed the moving belt, his body twisted sideways, and he slammed hard into the front console before being dragged across the treadmill. The belt tore into his skin as the live camera kept rolling, turning what should have been a warning sign into a full-blown disaster in front of an audience. People nearby rushed in and hit the emergency stop. Someone called emergency services while others pulled him free and started CPR right there on the gym floor. But by then, the damage had already been done. Christian never regained consciousness. The autopsies showed an enlarged, scarred heart, likely worsened by long-term performance drug use, then pushed past its limit by stimulants, dehydration, and extreme exertion. Police found no signs of foul play, and the death was ruled accidental. In the weeks after, the gym ended late-night livestream filming and added a policy requiring staff to intervene if members appeared visibly unwell during heavy cardio or drug-related stunts. His social media pages stayed up, but the final stream was taken down by his family, and several of his old followers later said it completely changed how they looked at science-based enhancement culture online. Christian treated his body like a machine until it finally gave out. And the next story hits me for a different reason, because the fatal mistake was so small, so avoidable, and so painfully tied to how it would look good on camera. It was September 12th, 2020, in Long Beach, California. A simple training studio sat inside a converted warehouse. It was just a quiet gym with the usual hum of overhead lights and the squeak of rubber shoes on rough concrete. Everyone else had gone home, leaving just two guys entirely alone.
Now, we all know the heavy pressure of social media, right? That constant need to really stand out. This brings us to a guy who always made the impossible look so easy.
Meet 26-year-old Jax Orion Varelli. Online, his fans called him Jax. He was a local fitness creator obsessed with wild bodyweight stunts. I am talking human flags, one-arm hangs, and insane upside-down holds. He was lean, focused, and a total perfectionist. He would do a move 20 times just to get his form exactly right for the internet. I actually respect his background. Jax did not come from wealth. He did gymnastics as a kid, but had to quit when it got too expensive. So, he taught himself in public parks and cheap gyms. He loved proving you only needed patience and pain tolerance, not pricey gear. But by 2020, the internet was crowded. He needed crazy static holds to keep people watching. That Saturday night, Jax stayed behind with his friend Eli Moreno to film one more challenge for the page. They were using a custom rig bolted into the warehouse ceiling, and one part of it had a rotating handle that let you spin while hanging. Jax's idea was to hit an inverted side flag, basically hanging upside down, twisting his body sideways, and freezing there while a timer counted on screen. And this is the part that really gets me, because the warning signs were right there. The rotating handle on the rig had already been making this odd clicking sound every time Jax shifted his weight. Not a tiny harmless squeak either, an actual metal on metal click that should have killed the whole session right there. Earlier that night, some local guy had climbed up and tightened it for them, but that was basically the end of the safety check. Nobody reloaded and tested it with body weight. Eli even mentioned it, and to his credit, clearly wasn't comfortable with it. But Jax waved it off. He was tired, it was getting late, and in his head, they were already one clean clip away from being done. Then came the second mistake. Jax had already dragged 2 thick crash mats under the rig, which was the one thing he did right. But when he checked the camera monitor, he didn't like how they looked in frame. They covered part of the gym logo on the wall and made the shot look less clean. So instead of adjusting the angle or just living with it, he decided the mats had to go. He told Eli he was only about 7 feet off the ground, that he had done harder things than this, that he felt completely in control, and that was it. He shoved the mats off to the side and left bare concrete underneath him. I hate how normal that choice feels, because it's exactly the kind of shortcut people make when they're filming content. Not because they think they're being reckless, but because they think it'll only take a second. Jax chalked his hands, climbed up, and pulled himself into position. He flipped upside down, twisted into the side flag, and locked his body rigid. It looked impressive too, which is part of what makes this so awful. From below, Eli kept filming while the timer ran. For about 20 seconds, Jax actually held it. His body was fully inverted, most of his weight hanging through his grip and shoulders, with almost no way to protect himself if anything slipped. Then Eli heard it again, that same little sound, a sharp metallic tick. Jax heard it too and glanced upward. Because Jax was fully upside down and twisted, he could not brace himself. He fell head first. He hit the bare concrete hard. The impact drove his head and neck into the floor with massive force, causing catastrophic trauma to his skull and upper spine. Eli yelled for help, and the owner ran in and called emergency services immediately. Paramedics arrived several minutes later, but the head and cervical spine injuries were far too severe to survive. He died shortly after midnight. The official ruling was a tragic accident caused by a broken, untested rig. But for me, the hardest part of this whole story is how ordinary the warning signs were. A little click, a moved mat.
It is a harsh reminder that looking cool on camera is never worth risking your real life. I hope we all learn from this.
Now, our last story has that same awful energy where one choice turns a normal gym session into something final. It was May 27th, 2017, in Columbus, Ohio. Outside, the afternoon sat at around 81 degrees, warm enough to make the old warehouse gym feel even heavier once it filled up. By mid-afternoon, the place was absolutely packed. The air hung thick with body heat and stale chalk. Mirrors were fogging up, and phones were out everywhere for weekend attempts. It was the classic Saturday vibe.
But for one guy, this gym wasn't just a weekend hobby. It was his entire life.
Let me introduce you to Leo Maddox Varon. At 34, Leo built everything around the iron. He worked a grueling weekday job as a forklift technician that left him with cracked hands and a sore back, then spent his evenings training or filming. According to his family, he used to wrestle, but after injuries and bills piled up, bodybuilding became his new identity. People around the local bodybuilding scene knew Leo for the thick veins across his shoulders when he was lean, and for how seriously he took every workout. He loved the attention, but he also hated looking weak, and that turned into a dangerous habit of ignoring his body. Based on his medical history, months before the accident, his left hand had been tingling and his arm would randomly go weak, but he kept calling it a pinched nerve and training through it, which I think a huge mistake. That Saturday, he was filming a shoulder workout for a local apparel sponsor who promised to feature him if he hit a massive overhead set. Honestly, this is where the pressure of social media deals completely clouds your judgment. By the time he got to the barbell, he'd already hammered his shoulders for an hour. His training partner Derek noticed Leo shaking out his left hand, trying to wake it up. That right there should have been the hard stop. During warm-ups, Leo admitted his collarbone felt tight and his fingers were buzzing. Derek told him to switch to a machine, but Leo brushed him off. He'd been teasing this big lift all week on social media and didn't want to back down with a crowd watching. A front desk worker even noticed he looked completely spent and breathing heavy before the set even started. To make matters worse, instead of staying inside the safety rack, Leo stepped backward onto the open platform because it looked better on camera. Derek stayed close, but without those safety bars, he wasn't in a position to catch a failed lift. A few regulars drifted over, phones up, ready for the video. Leo braced and took the bar. The first rep was rough, but he locked it out. The second nearly stalled, his face turning dark red, but he forced it up, lowered the bar, and shook his left hand one last time. Then he dipped for a third.
That's stubborn pride taking over right there, completely ignoring every warning his body was screaming at him.
And then disaster struck. His left arm just quit. The right side kept pushing, but the left elbow collapsed. Instead of dumping the weight forward, Leo tried to chase it backward to save the lift. His spine arched, his feet shuffled, and Derek lunged in, but he was a fraction too late. Leo's arm buckled completely. The steel bar crashed directly onto the back of his skull with a horrific crack. The blow pitched him face first into the concrete, and the heavy bar landed across his neck. Derek ripped the bar off instantly while someone called emergency services. A nurse in the gym rushed over, but Leo was already losing consciousness. Medics arrived in 7 minutes, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. The coroner found a crushed skull fracture, massive brain bleeding, and severe swelling. It was ruled a tragic accident. In the weeks after, Leo's old wrestling buddies raised money in his name. The gym quickly banned heavy overhead presses without safeties and funded a supervised youth lifting room.
A quiet tribute to a guy who loved the sport, but forgot that no video is worth your life. If you liked today's video, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. You know you want to. We'll see you next time.